Do you know what COP stands for? So it's Conference of the Parties. So a couple decades ago, we started to say like, hey, this climate change thing is looking like it's real. The UN starts, which is, fairly weak international organization, but nonetheless, it's the only one that exists. So I say, we really need to look at this. And so we just had COP26. And COP26 is, so every country in the world, over 200 countries came and were represented, including some small island nations, and they're all represented, and they're talking about what are we going to do, right? And what are we going to do here? Because this is really, the argument is that this is actually an existential threat. Climate collapse is an existential threat, like meaning that, human beings will never be gone from the earth, but the existence of life as we know it could come to an end, right? Life will be here, but like this whole human experiment could just be a problem. Could go down the tubes, right? Now, mind you, I'm not going to have an argument about how bad of a problem it is, or I don't, right? We're not going to talk about how big of a problem it is or whatever. But I'm going to give you 7 quick examples to tell me we just do something, right? Because you don't argue when it's something like this. You don't argue over it. You just decide, and you make decisions as best you can. And then we're going to come back to our conversation. So go ahead. I'm just going to. So for me, I like. Well, wait. Can you go back one? Well, no. You can leave that up there. Leave it up. Yeah. So I've had there are 3 famous climate scientists here at Penn State University, world famous. Like I've had conversations with all of them. I get the science, I understand the science, et cetera, right? But there's something else. What I started to do a number of years ago was say, these guys, I don't know the science, but the data come from individual people. Like you want to talk to people who are living life and who have been living life like on a plot of land, right? So let's say like this is my plot of land right here. Okay, and I've been living my life, and before me were my parents, and before them were their parents, and we've been living here, and we've been watching the cycle of the seasons, year after year after year after year, right? For decades, and in some ways, maybe over a century, right? And you want to ask these people, like, what are you seeing? So I started my own search for this question, because I really want to know, like, is this, how big of an issue? How big of an issue is this, right? Like, some of you probably, maybe you didn't even pay attention to COP26, right? And I'm like, COP20, dudes, if they're right, and they are right to a degree, if they're really right, none of you will have the lives that your parents had. Nobody will. The world, the planet Gaia, this thing we call this life being, right? As the physicists talk about Gaia, radical, right? Okay, so here. So I started finding out, well, what are rice farmers in this little area of Vietnam saying? And then they're saying things have radically changed. I listened to their stories. Past 40 years, everything has changed. I'm like, oh, and then they link it to what it is, right? Next one. Then I read about these sheep herders in Ireland. Same thing. Yeah, our sheep used to be able to graze up on this level, but then about 30 years ago, they had to go down 500 feet on the mountain, or 50 feet on the mountain, and then 20 years ago, another 50 feet, and it's all changed, right? And next one, fishermen in Nova Scotia, right? And linking it to these climate changes that we're seeing, like, you know what I mean? All linking to the big, larger process. Next one, construction workers in Iraq. Like I was talking to my buddy Bassam, who escaped into class in the beginning of the semester, my friend. And, he was telling me a couple weeks ago, he said, listen, in the summertime, like in July, we have a festival here that we celebrate in Iraq. And all the families come together and you do an outdoor barbecue. And he said, when I was young, up and through my teens, we used to have these outdoor barbecues and as a result of this festival. And you would be outside. You'd be outside all day long and all afternoon and all night long. And you did that. Today, these days, because of heat, because the temperature has risen so much, nobody does these festivals outside in Iraq, right? Kuwait, I was reading a story about Kuwait, same thing. The average, I was in Kuwait, but I was in Kuwait 10 years ago. The same thing, temperatures, like you don't go outside. The whole thing has shifted. Next one, vegetable vendors in Mali. I was reading the story about these vendors and about what they're seeing and the differences as a result of the changing climate. And these are individuals, right? It's like, whoa, damn, every little piece, right? Next one. Like bird watchers in Brazil, talking about all the different ways birds migrate because of the changing climate. What they're seeing and what they used to see, and people have been watching birds for 40 years. And it's just changing, and every year it's a little more and a little more and a little more. And then finally, like this corn farmer, I was reading a story about the corn farmer in Nebraska. And it's just like, damn, okay? So now we got this issue, right? Okay, go to the next slide. So here's the problem, right? The weak state, can someone explain that? What do you think I mean by that? Like the response to climate collapse on a weak state versus a strong state. Like what comes to mind? Anybody, all of you in the class, think about this, right? Think about everything we've been talking about. Now you're like, hang on, I'm gonna just nudge you along a little bit. We have to respond to this. What's coming at us? It's like a tsunami of change. And it's not like you have to respond or you, or this guy right here. No, we all have to respond. So what's this going to tell us, and what's that down there going to tell us? Go ahead, PJ, you want to go first? Did you have something? Either one.
I will say that, the power of states that tend more towards totalitarianism is that you can execute things really effectively. Part of that was exemplified. We watched that one video on the quiz about how China is just building up its infrastructure in its country like mad. And, that's something that is not to be overlooked. But if you have more individual freedom, it's good for idea generation. And it's good for people being able to go out and step out of the normal bounds and be able to come up with solutions to different problems that are novel. But on mass scale, if you want to implement those, a more totalitarian state does have a bit of an advantage.
Okay. Santiago, what do you think?
I agree. I think that if you have a stronger state, definitely the state can take more drastic measures. Because if you think about it, for instance, the United States, 300 million people, just alone in this class, the day that we talked about climate change for the first time, there were still a lot of people that remained unconvinced, and there's probably a lot of people that still don't believe it today. So if it's hard to convince a class of 500 people right now, how hard is it to convince an entire nation to take a change? Versus if you have a totalitarian government or a government where you just tell people what to do. And I think that has a lot of power. That being said, however, if the government also doesn't believe in climate change, with the COP26, I know that India is not on board for many of the things that are being made because they're making the claim that the most developed nations are not really giving them the economic support that they need to, so they're not going to be able to achieve their goals of reducing CO2 production by 2032 and things like that, right? So if your government is also not on board, then that's even worse. If the entire Indian government does not want to reduce CO2 emissions, then that's even more detrimental than leaving it up to individuals.
So let me actually complicate it. Let me jump off of what you just said there, right? Because the Indian government believes in climate change. That's not the problem. Listen. Here's the problem. People need to eat. People need security. They need to eat. They need a roof over their head. They need jobs. People want to get in their cars and they want to go somewhere, right? Maybe they want to go down to the Walmart and buy bullets for their guns so they can go to the target range and shoot their guns. Whatever it is, I don't know, right? Go buy beer, whatever. Go to the dispensary, I don't know. But the point is people want what they want. They get sick, they want health care, they need money for that. Everything's costs money. You have Biden's infrastructure bill, but we need more health care, and everybody wants more than what they have. Everybody does, and everybody in every population everywhere wants more than what they have. We want more security than what we have. Even if evidently this guy Bezos wants more than what he has, because if he didn't, he would just take some of his money and he'd give it to his workers. But instead, he pays them shit wages and exploits them, right? I mean, so like, all right, whatever. So he even wants more. So the problem is, if you're a government, you got to keep your people in control, man. Like, you got to like keep shit like, hey, listen, I'm going to get you all jobs. We're going to make sure you got food. We're going to make sure you have this. We're going to take care of these race relations in the United States. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. And we're going to like radically restructure the economy and the society, and probably in a way that many of you are going to lose your jobs, you're going to have less resources, you're going to have less things, because a lot of the money and resources that you have, we're going to be sending it over other places to nations that are going underwater, and we're going to be spending it in places where like we're trying to mitigate the effect of climate collapse. We're not going to be spending it on healthcare and all these other things. So India is saying, listen, man, y'all like, you want us to get off coal, but we got almost 1.4 million people here, and billion people, and they're a huge percentage of them are dirt poor. It's like, what do you want us to get off coal and what? How are we going to keep control? Dude, all we had was like some, former president telling some people in the United States the election got stolen, and then people come from all over the country and they swarm the Capitol and beat the shit out of police and do whatever they do, right? Imagine what's going to happen if we like say, hey, guess what? This climate collapse is really happening, and we're really going to restructure the whole thing. Like, people aren't going to buy it, so you got to go really slow. So the government over here is trying to keep shit under control in a big, huge way. The people over here are saying, we want our freedoms, and we want this, and we want that. Meanwhile, the government over there is going, but we got to take your freedoms away, y'all, because like, the freedoms are part of the problem that created this in the first place, and we really, really, really need to curtail them. But you can only curtail so much, because these people here, especially here in the United States, will get our guns out and start shooting. So it's like, so you're stuck. And you're stuck in this kind of place of trying to find some balance, and every nation is in the same position. So does that bring anything up in you?
I mean, I think there's a lot of, economic growth opportunity, which we have very little of currently in the U.S., economic growth that we could take advantage of in pursuing, improved infrastructure. We are starting to do that recently, but, it's a slow moving machine. But we're
going to take a lot of resources, and we got to put them in other places, right?
Absolutely. Especially, lithium.
All sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
And then what you have is politicians who are saying, oh yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to bring our CO2 emissions down. But the politicians, they're worried about being elected. Are you going to vote? Dude, you going to vote for the next president who says, hey, first off, I'm shutting off every single coal-fired power plant in the United States, shutting it down. Gas and oil, cutting it in half.
Who would really do that, though?
Let's just say they did. Nobody would vote for them. It's not. It's just like a thing. Like, you can't...
But even if you had a candidate that says that, no one believes that in politics in the U.S.
Exactly. So what we do is the candidates all say, they go to COP or they go somewhere and they say, yeah, we're going to do this down the road. But they're not going to do it. They're going to leave it to somebody else. So you see how this operates, right? It's the balance. You strong states, lots of freedom, back and forth. The inability to balance these things is probably what's going to keep us going along the route we're going and not do what we need to do to address climate collapse in the way we need to address it. And so we'll just spin. And okay, well, that's where we'll go. We'll just spin. Probably, because we can't get around it. Bro.
was just gonna say, like, at any point, like, that you have any, like, government still, like, it's still people, like, making individual decisions. And, like, it's still those people are, like, influenced by, like, very personal motivations. Like, no matter how much you try to, like, put our government in, like you say yourself in, like, many classes, like, there's always gonna be a bias, right? Like, each person has their own bias. But, like, what if it was, like, left to, like, something else? Like, I don't know, like, some artificial intelligence, like system that was to determine, like, I don't know, this is like some Black Mirror shit or something like that, but, like, you know, that were to, like, really, like put in and, like, control everyone, but it's at the same time not a person, but it's based more, like, on the data that is seen, for instance, for, like, what's happening around with, like the sea and, like forests and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, exactly. The problem is every one of you are going to graduate. Not the problem. This is a good point. Every one of you are going to graduate and you want a job. You want a job, right? You have student loans, and you want a job, and you want to make money, and you want to spend that money, and you're going to spend that money on resources. You're going to buy things. You're going to buy all sorts of things that really are going to be detrimental for the planet. They're going to take us further away from where we would need to go. But you all want that. There's another nearly 8 billion people on the planet that want the same thing. And so the fish are all going downstream like this. And at some point in time, you got to divert it and say, hold on, slow down a little bit, man. Slow down. But it's difficult, right? Like in Texas, as it gets hotter and hotter and hotter in the summertime, people keep cranking their air conditioning, crank their air conditioning. At some point in time, you can't do that. Some government has to come along and say, you know what? We're actually cutting your access to natural gas or to oil or whatever it is, electricity, whatever you're using to power your air conditioning, you're just not going to use it. That's what it's going to be. And that's what would have to happen.
That can, with certain levels of humidity, though, that can kill people at even not very high degrees.
Especially in Texas. I know this is the problem. This is why it's so incredibly difficult to find the balance here. See, this is the thing. It's so hard. And cultures, some cultures are down here where the collective action and acceptance of a stronger state are more reasonable and make sense within the context of one's own particular life. And some cultures are down here whereby those individual actions and decisions are so important for people, but as people operate on their own individual interests, it takes us, it may well just start to take us one by one over a cliff. And here, it stops all sorts of other opportunities. You see, so you're balanced back and forth constantly. Gentlemen, ask me a question that has nothing to do with any of this at all. Personal question, man. Anything at all, dudes. Whatever you want to ask. Bro, do you have a question? Anybody have a question? Dude, you have a question, right? You have one?
Do you have any kids?
God, no, I don't have kids. Could you imagine my kids?
Them?
No. No, my God. I teach. I got to deal with this. For 37 years, I've been dealing with other people's kids. I don't want my own. Okay. And besides, if I had kids, it would be like child abuse to have to be my kid. So, no, I don't want kids. Imagine growing up and being my kid. You'd be insane. First off, it's just like a direct ticket to a mental health institution.
Do you use marijuana recreationally?
No. I use it for other reasons, but not recreationally. No. I will say, no. Hang on. I'm gonna respond to this, and then we're gonna do Top Hat. Get ready for Top Hat in a second. First off, by the way, these guys were great. You guys were good.
I was talking to you.
Yeah. So listen, I will say this. I just want you to know this, those of you who smoke a lot of marijuana. I'm actually really kind of concerned about I'm not like, I was leading the decriminalization movement. I could tell you a couple stories actually, but including here at Penn State when I first got here. Like I'm pushing this across the country. I've been involved. I'm like having I guess just have a few questions about it. If you smoke, people like smoke pot every day and think like, oh, I'm not an addict because it's just marijuana. It's like, come on, man. Like, it's just a problem for me. Cannabis from when I was really young has always been my teacher, but I use it very, very, very selectively. And it's always just me in the plant. So it opens up things in me. So that's how I use it. All right, man.